Welcome to the Principal Choice Podcast, where it's wicked awesome. It's a good time. You'll learn a lot of things. Can't wait for you to check it.
Where did that come from?
What?
I don't know if the risk is worth the reward for that.
I
mean, I see what you were doing there, but like, you know.
Okay, I was just trying to boost up some energy. I'll
Just
take
get
it.
louder.
Louder? Louder.
Yes.
Okay, I
Energy
see what
up.
you're
Yes.
saying. Okay, thank you.
On today's episode with the Principal Choice Podcast, we are talking with Kaylin Tervier over risk, evaluating risk, and if it's worth to make the decision to make that risk. Find your purpose, find your people, and find your place. You got so held up in the risk, we forgot.
I know.
It's all right. Welcome back to the Principal Choice Podcast. Today, we are going to talk about risk, evaluating it, and some of the good things that can come from it. We are joined by Kaylin Tervier, where we are going to learn a little bit more about why sometimes risks are not so good, like that little accent that we just had from Elena, but we'll get there. Welcome to the show, Kaylin. We appreciate you jumping on with us to talk about risk. I didn't think that was going to be a risky thing to start with, but here we are. So one thing that we should really go into before we dive into all these different risk conversations is, first off, how do you evaluate risk? Because we all know things that are risky are sometimes not as risky, and some things are very, very risky, and it's probably not best to make that decision. So what are the few different things that you look at to evaluate risk of a decision or a purchase or whatever it might be?
So I feel like one really important thing for me is looking at like the impact on people and how it's gonna, what's that trickle-down effect gonna be? How's this gonna affect, the team or the people that are like doing the frontline work and the business as a whole as well? What's the impact there? And is that risk worth the reward of making the change or taking the risk? But I also really like to look at like the people on the team that are going to help and making sure that we have the right people to help when you're taking a risk, being able to have the right team to pivot if needed or to adjust and be able to change, having those supports there.
Yeah, that makes sense. I liked how you mentioned the trickle-down effect. Mm-hmm. I feel like there's sometimes that trickle-up effect too, and maybe not in the change, but how things are viewed. So maybe, if a leader doesn't consider the trickle-down effect and it's this big change, there's that trickle-up emotional effect of like, did we really just make this change? Like, did they even think this through? It really goes both ways. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And I think also that kind of goes into everybody's reaction to it. Because I know as soon as you implement that change and take that risk of doing that change, that's when folks kind of start worrying. They go, what does this mean for XYZ? What does this mean for expectations? What does this mean for our program? What does this mean for me and my livelihood? Some folks kind of love to either kind of take a moment and breathe with it or just go all out. And it's understandable because these risks are innately unknown. We don't know kind of where we're going with it. So how do you navigate that and ease other associates or people's minds while kind of navigating this risk and how that impacts them as well?
So I am a very slow processor because I want to make sure that I'm thinking through everything. And so I definitely can relate to that. So I think that's a really important piece, is just being able to validate those feelings and say, this is a risk and it is a change and we do have to adjust, and being able to just validate that and definitely just understanding where they're coming from. I do like to really process things and take a step back and a little bit of time before I am like making those decisions. That way I can feel comfortable. And so trying to give that space to the team as well so that they can have that.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think it's good to know too for those people that are on teams when their manager or their leader is kind of in the same boat as them when it comes to the processing of the change, when the processing of the risk. I know for me, myself, usually I'm like, let's jump into it. Like, yes, we're going to ask questions beforehand and we want to understand things.
Give me all the info.
But for me, at least, and there's
info.
definitely valid points and positives to that. But I think that can make things extra scary for the people that are not like that, especially when it's the person making the decision, because they know that they're probably going to be the ones that are affected mostly by it. What steps and maybe even like conversation points do you take or have with people that are more hesitant to the risk? And they're sometimes even just like, no risk, like not even going to consider it. How do you help them open up to those decisions more often?
I think just having those open conversations and being able to say, like, where are you at and what are your concerns? And let's talk about them. Let's talk about what is the actual, like, worst case scenario. So like an example that comes to mind, and it's a smaller risk, but when somebody on my team is taking their first phone call, that feels very risky to them because they're very nervous and they're very unsure. And so just being able to be like, you can't break anything on this, like with this, like the worst case scenario is that we have to have somebody call them back and give them some different direction or something. Like, you can't break it. And we're going to help you through it. If something goes wrong, we're going to help fix it. And so just being able to talk through those like worst case scenarios, like what is the actual worst case? Is it something that we can fix on the back end, or things if we make a mistake, and being able to kind of help them see that it might not be as scary or as risky as you think it is.
100%.
I love that too. I also like the fact that when you were talking about a risk, it wasn't a huge one. It wasn't, it didn't feel life or death. It wasn't like the entire company's weight is on your shoulders. And if you fail, then everything crumbles. It is sometimes that risk is that first step and seeing how to navigate it. And a lot of folks are afraid to fail or fall and they don't want to disappoint. And so I love the fact of just, walking them through that and saying like, hey, it's just one step. You have a safety net. And I think having a safety net is so ridiculously important because, it helps boost that confidence where you can kind of feel like you can take those next directions and then take that next call or make that next decision to progress further. No, go ahead, please.
I agree 100%. When I think back to some of like the bigger risks that I've taken, like in my career personally, like one of the biggest factors in me feeling ready to take that and stepping into that risk was knowing that I had the right people that were gonna help me if I did run into a setback or needed to adjust. It wasn't gonna be, oh, we're done, this didn't work. It was gonna be, let's pivot, let's adjust, let's make a change, and they were gonna support me through that. That safety net was really important in being able to take those risks.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What do you feel like is one of the biggest risks that you've had to kind of overcome or work through? And how has that kind of affected how you handle risks now?
So when I was a very new manager, I was asked to step into helping implement a new program. And that was very overwhelming. I had only been a manager for about 4 months. Oh. And so I was really still getting my feet under me as a manager and wasn't very confident. But throughout that, when I was making that, somebody told me like, it's scary, but I think this would be really good. I think this could really help you with where you're wanting to go with your career and where you're looking for. And so as I stepped in and went through that process, the one thing that I feel like I really gained was a lot of confidence because I had to make decisions. I had to be able to move quickly with it. The implementation happened very fast. And so I feel like the biggest thing that I feel like how I changed through it was just in the confidence with being able to make those decisions and those changes and take those risks, I guess. Yeah,
confidence is huge. And, there's also that fine line between confidence and, cocky or whatever people want to say. Arrogance, that too. And that, I feel like one of the things that I have noticed with people that are very, very like, not hesitant, but the opposite. They're welcome to risk. They love risk. Some of them start to go into that arrogance and cocky area where you're like, you just think everything's going to work because you're the best. And it's like, that's not really the case. So I like hearing it from that position of a little bit more of those like humble beginnings where you were like, I don't even know what I'm doing now. And you want me to do this big thing. But, you know, when I've helped people with things similar to that, that shows that you have the confidence in them. And that usually starts to spark that fire, light that flame. And that's one of the biggest pieces of support. I mean, I've had people that were in really bad spots and struggling. And I said, you know what, we're just going to have you try this new thing. Let's go for it. It's a little risky, but then they did it and it blew up. And I was like, oh, wow. Like, this is what I knew I saw. You didn't see it, but we got there. Now, on the flip side of that, that sounds like it was a risk that went pretty well. You learned a lot from it. You gained a lot of confidence. Can you describe a time that you may have taken a risk that didn't pan out so well and what you learned from it?
I'm not sure on this one. It's kind of tricky because I feel like when I think back, there's probably like decisions and things that I made where they were like smaller, but the overall I feel like was that I was able to pivot or adjust or go and get the support that I needed to help overcome that. So I can't say that there's something that's coming to mind immediately as like, this is like a huge thing that I did. I think there's definitely things where I'm like, oh, I could have handled that differently or better. But nothing that's like where I'm like, oh, I took this risk and it just failed and I was out and done. The only one that's kind of along the lines is I did when I was changing careers, I thought that I had found something that was a very, very good fit for me. And when I got into the company, I found out that it was really not. It was a really big struggle, I feel like, just because I didn't feel the company was matching my ethical values. And so navigating that was very, very hard. And I ended up just feeling like I wasn't able to navigate it at all. It was just putting me in really uncomfortable situations. And so I ended up just leaving that position and moving on. It didn't feel like a risk at the beginning, but as I was like navigating it, there's a lot of things where I was like, I'm not being able to make the choices that I'm comfortable with in this position. And so it was disappointing to have to just leave that position behind.
Yeah. That's one of those things too that some people are very keen on is like whenever they get a new job or a new opportunity comes up, some people are very like, yeah, it's great. It's a new opportunity. But then there's those that are like, they see those risks and it stops them from making those decisions. I'm sure plenty of people have been in that boat before, or even where you started a company and you still feel that risk and you don't let it go away. And it kind of turns into fear where you're like in shock. You're like, I don't know, is it flight or fight or what do I do? Like, where do I go? But
absolutely. And I think that's really saying something too, is remembering that everything you do can be a bit of a risk. You changing positions was a risk. And, you know, putting your faith in a company that you didn't realize you didn't align with, it was a risk. Navigating that and trying to still uphold and kind of navigate that. All of those are different forms of that risk, especially when it's, you know, that's intermingling your personal and professional, you know, your professional expectations. And that was a risk against your personal ethics and morals. And that's hard to kind of balance and navigate. And I think, you know, it's risky to go out on a limb and try those things, but it's also even riskier to say goodbye to those. I think that's kind of a lot overlooked because you're giving up on something where you're like, well, I know I have some reliability here. I can support myself. I have this, and I'm about to just uplift, upheave my entire life for this and go, okay, bye, for the bets. So I just think that, you know, it's one of those things where we need to realize that we do things that are risky all the time and every day, but it's all on how we navigate it and how we put ourselves forward through those risks. Do you have a time where you feel like there was a risk that you took that kind of changed the way your attitude about risks? Like the outcome. Like, let's see if I can word this all funny. I was like, we're getting fun with it here. But yeah, like where that you were in the middle of a risk and you were like, oh no, I can now pivot, and I feel like I don't mind taking risks as much anymore.
I think so. When I was doing the implementation, a big part of that was we were working with our partner company on that, but I was the only person from principal within that building. And so a lot of it, like my supervisor was in a different building and in a different location, as well as a lot of my supports within the principal choice. And we had a lot of meetings, a lot of touch bases, but there was a lot of things that happened and had happened very quickly and changes that had to be made. And so just being able to like be in that position where I didn't maybe have somebody like right there where I could run and ask every question to, it kind of forced me into making those decisions. And so I feel like that was just being forced to do it and do it over and over and over again.
Almost like a weight off your shoulders when that happens, where you're just like, I'm just going to plow through it and we're gonna hope for the best. But when you see the results and you see, especially now where you can see the fruits of your labor, you can see it thriving and you can see all the good we're doing and able to do because of this program and this department. And it's because of those simple beginnings. I think that's, that really kind of helps ignite it too, going, okay, I saw this risk and I see this beautiful benefit that's not only me and the company or my associates, but it's also the community that we're helping, as well. I really love that.
Yeah, I feel this kind of keys into a previous episode that we did with Errol it's a little bit off topic, but it does connect, where motivation and dedication, those are two completely separate things. And the motivation to make a risky, in quotations, decision is different than like the dedication you showed through the implementation of that decision, because you could have been motivated to like, yeah, let's do it. And then 2 weeks in, you're like, I'm overwhelmed. I'm done. But you chose to say, no, like I am getting benefit from this. Even if I don't see it today or tomorrow, in 2 years, I can look back and be like, look at how much I've learned. I'm a whole new person, it feels like sometimes. And I think that's one of the things too, like not just looking at risk as a short-term thing, but also a long-term thing. What are you going to gain from it? What are the things that are going to happen in 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years? What are the drawbacks that could happen in that long too? I feel like we live in a society that is so focused on the short term that we get locked in and anxious, and we're like, oh no, it's going to hurt in the short term. It's like, but how does it look in 3 years? So yeah, that kind of, when you were talking about that, getting those positive things from it, I kind of keyed into that last thing that we talked about not too long ago. So yeah. What would be some things of advice that you would give to just someone in general who is starting to come across more opportunities for things that come along with risk? What would be some words of advice that you would give that person to help evaluate the risk and make a decision that's best for them?
To trust themselves, which is very hard, but I think that people a lot of times don't realize that you're the best judge of what's best for you. And that can be scary to kind of own, but just putting that trust in yourself and knowing that you do know what's best for you and trusting and kind of remembering that as you're looking at those risks.
Sure.
I really love that. And I think that kind of goes with the, remembering risk isn't a dirty word. I think we hear risk and we go, oh my gosh, no. But, it really is. And I think you actually used the best word for that, opportunity. A risk is an opportunity. And I love that. And just trusting yourself is really beautiful. Thank you so much. I really love that.
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming on to talk to us about risk and how to navigate it, evaluate it, and all of the things that flow into that category. I feel like there's a lot that goes into risk, but
thank you for having me.
Of course. Well, Milena, what did you learn about risk today?
Well, I learned that some are not worth the reward and that I need to trust myself in those risks and that it's okay to take them from time to time. and to be honest with each other when you're in those risks.
100%. Yeah.
I learned a lot.
Yeah, 100%. Me too. And if you'd like any other resources, look in our show notes. And until next time, find your purpose, find your people, and find your place with the Principal Choice Podcast.